The hype behind AI agents is at an all-time high, but companies are still struggling to move past just internal pilot stages. And AI tools are appearing daily and promise the world, but measurable results remain a bit scarce. So today I'm talking with Andreas Welsch, an AI strategist and author of the AI Leadership Handbook, a LinkedIn top voice, as well as a LinkedIn learning instructor. And he's also a top 10 leader in agentic AI, the perfect person to clarify what's actually working today. And we're going to outline some practical steps that organizations should follow for responsible adoption and measurable business impact. How are you doing, Andreas?
Hey, Ray, thank you so much for having me. Doing well, and I'm excited to be back on the show. I know we've recorded an episode on AI strategy a couple of years ago even, super excited to be talking about agentic AI with you today. There's been so much happening, and I can't wait to dive into it.
Absolutely. You know, I'm so excited to have you because I feel like I'm usually the person making up the hype, and people like you have to go clean it up behind me. I'm always talking about this tool and that platform that just released and sort of the cutting edge, but I really do feel that we've kind of entered sort of like a hyper hype zone now, where every product release promises the world. Everybody's promising things like AGI and beyond, and I think we really need to sort of have somebody that can take all that context and really make it useful to people and talk about what's real. So in your work, one of the things that I first thought of is how you talk about agent washing and how that term agent itself is tossed around to define all kinds of things. Can you talk a bit about what you mean and what your definition is of a true agent?
So, see, to your point, we're seeing more and more talk about AI agents, agentic AI, the type of AI that can accept the goal from a user and divide it into subtasks, work on these tasks individually, and come back with a recommendation and even take action. But we've seen this over time with different hypes, with different technologies in the tech industry, that obviously vendors are hyping up their products. Hey, here's a new release of something super awesome that we haven't been able to do before. You need to take a look at this. You need to invest in our products. You need to, try this out. And a lot of it makes sense, right? There are huge investments going into making these products, into these tools available. Startups are looking to raise funds, so they need to look good. They need to show the value that they're bringing to their prospects, to their customers. And from what I can see, that's driving a lot of the hype. That's driving a lot of the conversation about it. But at the same time, if you look at your own company, at your own enterprise that you work at, you see that adopting this new technology, whether it's agentic AI or generative AI, is actually happening at a much, much slower pace in many organizations. And a lot of that has to do with people that are still there, and processes and guidelines and all sorts of things that we need for a business to typically work, that can also now slow us down in adopting these new technologies. So agent washing, when I look at the market, is many, many vendors in the tech space now saying, yep, we've got agents. We've had them for a long time. Sometimes they are agentic. Sometimes it's just a rebranding of other things below the covers.
Yeah, I was just talking to somebody who was telling me about their amazing fridge that now has AI. And I don't know what kind of agents it has, but it has some agentic capabilities. And I thought maybe we've gone too far.
Like, yeah, we've had this vision for a long time. Cameras in your fridge that they can see what's in there, a fridge that knows what kind of meals you typically like to make. Maybe it's connected with your fitness app, and then it can reorder things on your behalf. I think this vision and the art of the possible has been there for a long time. The question, like with many things, is it really useful? Is it something that I would be spending money on? And then we also quickly get to data privacy, data protection. Would I even want to know, the vendor or the vendor of my fridge knows what I buy and where I shop and these kind of things?
So what's the difference between something like just that's considered a workflow versus what you would call a true agent?
I think that gets to the core of the question, and is especially picking this agentic AI hype apart. So to me, there are two kinds of agentic AI, if you will, below that term. One is what we've seen for a long time, workflow automation. First do this, then do that, then do something else. Maybe create a document on your OneDrive or on your Google Drive, then use AI to create an outline or create a blog post, then save it there, and then send the document on to somebody else. That would be a workflow.
Mm-hmm.
The other part is a true agent that you can loop into a conversation in Slack or in Teams, and you can say, hey, here's a research agent that goes out and that finds information, financial information about companies in a certain industry. So, hey, agent, can you find out the latest information about maybe LinkedIn or Microsoft or Amazon or some other company as it relates to this conversation that we're having here? So this agent knows where to look for information. It's connected to the internet. It can pull in data. It can reason. It can summarize data, and it acts on your behalf when you want it and when you need it. So almost like a digital employee in that sense, but different from first to this, then to that, then to that, and here's a bit of agentic AI that makes a decision, and then we move on in the process. To me, that's the big distinction.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think too, the ability of agents to kind of do something when they encounter a problem. Like sometimes with these agents, you can tell them, go find this information on this website. And sometimes they'll come back and say, well, I can't find it here, but I found some other sources. Let me go look at those. So it's that, I think, ability to adapt that makes it, different than a workflow. Do this, do this, do this, like not sequential, but able to go in different directions.
That's a really great point. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we've had AI now for, I can't believe it's only been a couple of years, two and a half years, maybe, or at least ChatGPT. Obviously, we've had AI and machine learning before then. But where do you feel that most companies stand in terms of adoption, and what have been some of the challenges that they've met?
It's been interesting following the news, and to me that's usually a good indicator of where you see what companies are really doing, and the ones that are vocal about it and sharing not only what they're doing but also what they've learned. And I think they're on a very, very broad spectrum, right? You have the large multinational companies that have been doing machine learning and statistics and predictive analytics for a long time, that have built that muscle. So when generative AI came out, it was almost just like another technology that fit into that same modus operandi of how they are working with these kinds of technologies and data. Now with agentic AI, that's similar. So if you've been in that game for a longer time as a company, you've likely built that muscle, and you know what things work, what don't, how you assess what are good opportunities to use AI for, what are the ones that we might not want to invest in. People have many great ideas. AI is a shiny object, so let's try something out and see what sticks. Usually not the best approach. Companies that have been doing this for a while with AI know how to do it and how not to do it. On the other hand, you have companies that are just getting started, the ones that have taken more of a wait and see approach. Let's see what others are doing, what's working well for them, so we don't need to make all these investments in these hard learnings, for example. And we can benefit from their learnings and then say, okay, here are the 3, 4, 5 things that we strategically invest in.
So one great case study has been an article that we saw from Walmart and some of the things that they're doing with agentic AI. So what I loved about where they have gone is clearly they're a very data-rich company. They're one of the maybe farther along companies that are more advanced, is really not just employ individual agents. I think we saw first individuals bringing artificial intelligence tools to help them perform tasks. You moved on to sequential things, and then we saw the rise of sort of specialized agents. You mentioned search and deep research and some of the coding agents and analysis agents. But now the way that Walmart is thinking about their agents is, can we have agents that are actually kind of on top of the other agents and sort of manage that process? Is that where you think we're going? Where do you think the adoption is going to lead to?
So it's interesting to see, again, how large companies are approaching that. Certainly, they have much larger organizations. They have deeper pockets. They have more funds available and access to technologies and resources that smaller companies might not have access to. But be that as it may, I think generally over time, I expect to see more of these agent swarms or multi-agent systems, depending on which term you favor, to become stronger in organizations. It's not just I have one agent that helps me do with one task. eventually I'll have multiple agents that will collaborate. Maybe it's a marketing brief and one agent goes out and researches the ideal customer profile. The next one looks at how should we message to this audience what we are selling. The next one helps you with creative, with ads and ad copy. And the last one makes sure that everything aligns with your marketing strategy, guide, branding guidelines, and so on before it presents the information to you. So I think that is the new reality that we're going to see pretty soon. If you look at some of the more technical side of things, like agent-to-agent protocol that Google has made available, model context protocol from Anthropic, where agents can call tools, agents can communicate with each other. I think that interoperability is going to be key as well, and a key driver to make that happen in business.
That's great. I know that in your space, people are really thinking more about governance scale and how important that is. And when I've talked to companies, one of the things that I've come to is this gap between the tools that they can have now that people are allowed to use now and what's available in the market. I think this is where we get to some of potentially the hype. But in terms of capabilities, the things that you see released, like yesterday, we saw some announcements from Claude and how they're partnering with Microsoft to allow Claude, agents to be available to Microsoft individuals, because they're so good at doing like a business agent that analyzes a bunch of data and prepares these really detailed reports. So how do you remain safe as a company, yet at the same time competitive if maybe you're being held back by the availability of some of these tools?
So that is a very real question. In fact, I had a conversation with the CEO of a software company about a week ago or so, and he said, hey, we are looking for a head of AI strategy that we can bring in to lead the entire AI program. But I need to act very quickly, not only on hiring this person, but ensuring we build on the momentum we have in the organization with AI, because everybody comes to me and says, I want to use AI. Can I use this tool? Can I use that tool? Can I spend some money here and there? And they said, well, yes, we need to be forward-leaning and thinking. We want and we need to embrace AI, but at the same time, we need to make sure that we are not exposing our data to certain risks, that it doesn't end up in somebody's model. All these kinds of concerns that we've seen for a long time in organizations, and especially in IT functions, where it's usually about data risk and return on investment. So my recommendation there has been, think about what is a simple framework that you can create. What are the absolute don't do's, the high risk applications, things that we will never use? What are the ones where we can, quote unquote, just activate it in a product that we already have licensed, maybe for an incremental subscription? Again, making sure it aligns with your business objectives and it actually delivers value. And on the other hand, what are the tools and platforms that maybe the IT department or developers might need to help them be more efficient and be more effective? So thinking about different categories. We also need to realize that many employees are already using AI in their daily work, whether or not it's officially approved by their company. So that is indeed this tension between employees wanting to use more, companies usually being a little more risk averse and a little slower in bringing that together without slowing down business or without employees circumventing what you have in place.
So do you usually propose that, companies have some sort of pilot programs, sort of research? How do they approach finding out whether some of these new capabilities are something that would be safe for them to use?
First of all, it depends on the size of the company. Say this company is probably about 200, 300 employees. So not huge, but also not small. So you cannot over-engineer the process. You cannot put everything through a filter in a 3-month-long review board. People will find their ways around it, and until you get to a decision, they'll use things already, whether or not they're approved. On the other hand, it cannot be a free-for-all, and anybody can use what they want. So one suggestion could be, hey, set up a simple survey and survey tool. Gather information from your employees that are requesting new products and say, what is this for? What department is it in? What business KPI do you expect to improve? Is this a productivity play? Is there some other key performance indicator that you expect will improve through the use of this tool? And then make an assessment. Short, look at this. Does this make sense? Here's the cost. Here's what we expect to save, and move forward. And then after a quarter, 2 quarters, go back to the person that has requested it and say, okay, this is what we expected to save.
Mhm.
What do you think? Did we realize that? Did we exceed it? Or did we not realize what we had intended to? And if we haven't achieved that, then should we continue using that product? Is there a different product? Or should we go find a different way of doing that?
Another thing that I appreciated was that you talk about the concept of building a culture of trust and not fear. I think you're kind of talking a little bit about that. Can you give me some examples of how this works in a large company? I think you maybe touched on it a little bit, but maybe contrasting it with the opposite way of doing or haven't seen this being done.
I think this year we've seen a lot of examples where CEOs of different companies said, we want to be AI first. We have to be an AI first company, ... or else. Right? I think that's the part that always strikes me as I'm not sure if that's really the best way of going about it. Because from my experience, when you do that, when you push it on people and you say or else, then you get a lot of resistance. All of a sudden, it's not experimental anymore. We're not encouraging you to use it. You have to use it or else. So AI first, I think, is a great idea in principle, but many companies are not even AI ready yet. So employees don't even know how to confidently use these tools, and what are the limitations, and what are the opportunities, and what else can I do with this beyond using it as a question and answer machine? It is more than Google, right? It's more than a Google search. So many organizations are at that level where we first need to create a basic level of AI literacy amongst employees, so they're AI ready, and then they can think about, well, do we still need to do this task manually, or is this the best way how we're doing it? Should I be looking at AI tools and have a much better understanding of what AI can do? And you've probably seen the study by MIT that came out a couple of weeks ago. 95% of generative AI pilots in companies are failing. It's been a highly controversial study in the way it was communicated, because it ties back to what the lab at MIT is offering in their framework. But in general, we've seen numbers similarly in that ballpark. It's been the 80 to 85% failure rate all the way back to 2018 when we're doing machine learning. And people said, whoa, what's happening? I thought it was easy. All the vendors tell me, it's plug and play and activate this and build whatever you want. Well, guess what? It comes back to your data. It comes back to the processes. It comes back to your culture, empowering your employees, and really leading from the front. And also acknowledging that this is not a one-size-fits-all. It needs more than technology. And by the way, that's something I cover in my most recent course with LinkedIn Learning for business leaders and senior executives, how you can run AI projects successfully. And it's all about managing these realistic expectations, especially if you've never gone through that process. A lot of the things seem like magic, seem like they're super easy to do. Thanks for pulling that up. So take a look at those courses as well. Introduction on AI agents, and also how to run successful AI projects. Because, right, after all, we want to make sure that you're in the 5% or 15% or 20% of successful projects, and not the rest. Right? One more point in other terms, right? Looking at these statistics, it means that between 80 to 95% of the work that you do on AI this year is not going to lead to a result, or not going to lead to a positive result. It's terrible, right? So we have to change that.
What I see happening a lot of times is a little bit of a misalignment. People are told to use AI. The managers all get told to use AI. Then they tell their employees. Then when you end up as a solution that isn't the right fit for AI. So I've seen this where people are told to use AI, and they try to build something that maybe a knowledge base would be a better solution for. But because they're told to use AI, they're trying to do something that AI isn't really suited for. And so I think this is a great sort of course for people who are trying to implement.
Yes.
And that's what I love about
Absolutely.
your course, is that, again, I'm usually the person making up the hype, telling people about all the new things. So I'm so happy to be talking to you. So
wonderful.
Speaking of like maybe hypey things, interesting things that are happening in the industry, what are you getting excited about? Like, what are some of the most interesting technology developments that you're seeing that are for real and that companies should be paying more attention to?
So I would love to give you an example from Switzerland. I was just there a couple of weeks ago in a spoke at an event, and afterwards we had a Q&A session, and attendees, mainly C-suite leaders, said, well, what about bias? What about different worldviews, more westernized worldviews in our OpenAI, Anthropic models, maybe ideally more European views in Mistral, then with Qwen and DeepSeek potentially more Chinese or Eastern type values. Does it mean I need to use different models for different purposes and so on? And so our conversation evolved. We said, well, actually, there's this development towards much smaller models, small language models that are trained on a subset of data, highly curated, that are excellent to cater to those specific needs. That could be one thing. Speaking of Switzerland, just the other day, Switzerland announced their first large language model that has been developed by universities in Switzerland, that is open, that is transparent. I think we're seeing some of that as well. I believe there are some initiatives in Australia as well to build more localized and regional large language models. To me, those are some interesting parts. And then the other part definitely is about agentic AI. How do I build agents, multi-agent systems that collaborate, that not only collaborate within your company, but ideally at some point collaborate with agents in your supplier's company, in your customers or prospects company, right? So things like that, where I think we can apply a lot of what we know and what we've learned from business and how humans do business with each other, and extrapolate that towards agents. And that also, means if we bring agents into our teams and into our organizations, does it change the dynamic? How does it change the dynamic? How do employees need to work with these tools and make sure that they get good outcome and good output? As leaders, we learn you need to be clear about the goal. You need to tell your employee or the person you delegate a task to, what are tools that are available to you? What is the context? Who else should you work with? And how do we even know at the end of the day if the result that you've created is good? And these same 5-6 steps apply to working with AI agents as well. But I feel a lot of times, especially as professionals, we might not be aware of these simple tricks or checking all these 5 boxes. So there's a lot of more enablement and education that goes into it to make sure that these multi-agent systems really work well.
So excellent. One thing I've read from your website and some of the work that you do is that you obviously prepare a lot of leadership, and you talk to them about the 9 steps to help get businesses ready. Can you talk a little bit about the ways that people today are trying to get prepared, and what is effective and maybe what isn't?
So, like we've already talked about, on one hand, I see companies that push the AI mandate. You need to use AI. There are some in the middle who I think are doing it much, much better. They say, we would love for you to use AI. Here are the tools, here are the resources. Maybe also here's a community of practice that you can think about, and you can get together every 2 weeks and share your experience. How have you used these tools? What have you found? What's working well? What's not working so well? So that together we shape this culture, and we get to a point where we decide, okay, these are the types of products that we are going to use going forward because we've seen that they work well in our business, and these are the ones that we're not going to move forward with. So this is one of the big parts, and also part of how I advise leaders to think about this, right? It has to be inclusive if you want to change the culture. And at the end of the day, we still have people in our business, and we need to have them there. That's the core and the soul of our business. So it's really this balance between, yes, embracing AI, but also making sure we take people on their journey and we give them actionable information and resources that actually help them be more productive, be more effective, and again, do things that they haven't been able to do before with the help of AI.
Excellent. So let's talk a little bit about project failures. I know that AI can be frustrating because sometimes we're trying to get it to do something that it isn't qualified for. We get things like hallucinations now when people try to do work, or the project just goes in a poor way. The tools aren't quite ready. So how should companies sort of think about this, the project failure problem, and how should they deal about that? Because we're in a very kind of experimental time right now.
To me, a lot of that has to do with corporate culture in your organization. So we are used to running projects that are linear, start to finish. In the middle, there are some tasks that we do, and then we've reached the result. Great, we're done, and we celebrate. AI projects, whether it's building a model, whether it's incorporating generative AI, whether it's building AI agents, they are not linear. They are cyclical, and there are multiple cycles, from generating an idea to getting data to validating your hypothesis with that data, in moving it down towards production, ideally. Also, again, not each and every model, not each and every project makes it to production. That's where the 80 to 95% failure rates come in. But it's important to create this culture of understanding that, hey, this is more like a research project in many ways, and it's not a start finish type of thing. So part of that means sensitizing your leadership for the fact that not everything will be successful. So we need to have different milestones, different review points along the project, where the technical teams connect with the business team, with the business sponsor, and say, hey, this is how far we've gotten in the last 4 weeks, for example, since the last time we've talked. We think we're making good progress, or we're struggling here and there. Can your teams give us more input? Are we looking at this the right way? And then, a lot of times you might also see that things are not moving forward. You're not getting the results that you hope to get. And then it's a conversation of, what do we do? Right? Do we continue? Do we give it another 4 weeks and see if we can make meaningful progress? Or are we already at the point where we might need to say, okay, let's park this, let's revisit this, maybe when we have more data, or when we have more clarity, or resources are available again. And also, don't be afraid to pull the plug on this and say, no, we're not moving forward. But then the important thing is that has to be a learning experience. It has to be something that you can turn into positive energy to say, okay, we've tried this, it didn't work, and here's what we've learned. Not every company, not every culture is at that point where they're able to embrace that. But that's the part that we need to get to say, even if we're not moving it to production, what did we learn so we don't repeat the same mistakes on our next project?
That's great. And I think a lot of companies would benefit from having more of a startup mentality, or where we're not telling people just use AI, put AI in everything, let's see what we can automate, but thinking about let's pilot some things, and let's sort of come back and take a look at what's working and how we can kind of advance. I think a mandate to pilot, experiment is probably the right place to be.
Yeah, maybe adding one point there, right? A lot of times, to your point, you see companies say, okay, we need to try out as many things as possible with AI, whether we build them or we activate them in products we have. Now, think about your own life as an individual or as a consumer. You don't buy 10 or 20 or 30 different subscriptions for products just to try them out and sign up for an annual subscription, hoping that maybe this might be something, or that might be something, that might be something. You usually decide, what are the biggest problems I have? Where am I spending most of my time? Where am I looking to improve certain things, or make them more efficient? And those are usually the 3, 4, or 5 bets that you place, and you look for a solution. It's not like you throw spaghetti on the wall and hope that something sticks. So for whatever reason, that's the mentality companies seem to apply. Let's go out, let's buy AI, let's find some quick wins and then move forward. And then we're surprised a lot of times that it's not working as well as we thought it would.
Definitely. I think I do tend to be sort of the former, buying a bunch of stuff to experiment. So at least that's what I tell my wife, that I have to experiment. So let me get all these things. And I think it's fun to experiment, but you're right. You really need to be more kind of goal minded and goal focused.
Yeah.
So you cover a variety of topics at LinkedIn. Can you tell me a little bit about each of your different courses? We talked a little bit about mitigate AI business risk, but you certainly have other offerings. And I know, because I saw you post online, that you've got something else coming up. So maybe you can give us a sneak peek.
Absolutely. So look, I've been a LinkedIn Learning author for a little over a year. And when I first connected with LinkedIn Learning, we said, what are the topics that will likely be important and hot by the end of 2024? And we said, hey, we're seeing AI agents emerging. And so the first 2 courses that you see here are all about how do you lead agentic AI disruption? How do you prepare your organization for AI agents? And those are about giving leaders tools and frameworks and ideas to think through, well, if we're used to clicking on buttons, filling out form fields, and submitting workflows, all of a sudden we have something that can think, analyze, reason, act in different shapes and forms. What does it mean? How does it change the dynamic on our teams? What information do we need to give our teams? What are some examples of where we can use this across the business, from customer service to HR, procurement, finance, sales, and so on? So you'll learn a lot about that in these courses. And then obviously the one that we've already talked about, making sure that your AI projects are successful. If you're doing this for the first time, or if you're being asked to do this for the first time in your career, lots of things are new. So you'll learn all about that. Also, frameworks, templates that you can use in your business, and again, not being afraid to pull the plug and say, no, we're not continuing with this.
So what can you tell me about anything that's coming up? I saw your video.
Yeah.
Behind the scenes. What's going on there?
So just a couple of weeks ago, I was in Carpinteria, California at LinkedIn Learning Studios to record 2 new courses with the team on site. And these are for professionals and for leaders, all about how can you empower your teams to use agentic AI in your business while maintaining high quality and high accountability. So in other words, how not to create AI slop, right? If you've heard that term, or maybe you've experienced that yourself, somebody sends you a first draft or a report or something they've created, and you start reading and you're like, hey, come on, that seems like it comes straight out of Copilot or ChatGPT. What's going on? Did you not spend the time, reviewing this, editing this? It's not bad, but I know you can do better work, and you've done better work before. So just because we have AI available doesn't mean that as leaders and as employees, we're off the hook delivering good quality. So how do you shape that as a leader? And on the other hand, as an employee, as a professional, how do you use AI in responsible ways that maintain high quality and high accountability? So yeah, awesome experience being on site. You have to experience that in the studio. It's like a mini Hollywood. And yeah, I'm really still in awe. I can tell you that.
Yeah, so exciting. Oh, I had no idea what you were going to say when we talked about the sneak peek of what you're doing. Those things are so timely. I'm super excited. I feel like I need to, every once in a while, therapeutically, I just need to come and watch one of your courses so that I can calm myself on the hype. And I know AI slop is really a huge issue, so I'm super excited that you're doing those. You're just the right person to do that. So thank you so much for spending some time with me. And I appreciate you, coming to talk to me about these topics that I really find very useful and interesting to people. Some of the things that we talked about in the articles that we discussed are things that have been on my mind, and I knew that I needed to talk to you about it.
Awesome. Wonderful. Ray, it's always a pleasure talking with you. Folks, for those of you listening, give me a follow on LinkedIn. Check out the LinkedIn Learning courses. Take a look at the AI Leadership Handbook if you want to learn how to turn technology hype into business outcomes. And I just hope we get to do this again.
Absolutely. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.